And so you can kind of backtrack exactly from emissions to file to raw data and see everything in sequence. We not only extract kilowatt hours consumed and address and billing, but also information that might be inside images or graphs. We are back to NetNada product update with a bit of behind the scenes with Bala. We're going to tell you all about what happens at NetNada, how we build what we build, and a bit of insights on how to use it best. Yep. I'm Afonso, one of the co-founders, and
I'm Bala, one of the developers of NetNada.
And feel free to ask us any questions in the comments. So we are on a March update, and that was a big month for us. It was all about what I believe was data integrity and making sure that people can trust the numbers behind NetNada. Do you want to tell me a bit more about just high level what we worked on and why is it important as a developer to make sure you spend enough time to build the integrity of what happens behind the scenes?
Yeah, of course. So, well, if you know a little bit of about NetNada, you will understand that we ingest a lot of data, and it's like a lot of different types as well. So it's really important that we ingest it, calculate it, as well as display it right, because end of the day, it's for audit purposes, and even for your analytics, we need to be very accurate. So just on a higher level surface, for this sprint, we managed to make sure that the waste data that we bring in and some other commuting data, et cetera, that we like bring into the app is getting calculated correctly and is getting the right, emissions, and like all those metrics are being calculated properly.
Yeah. I think more than from where I'm sitting, because we always started with always double checking if emissions are being calculated correctly. But I think as the developers, what you actually moved from is the extra layer of how do clients get data into the platform. So I know that on waste as an example, waste can be volume, can be weight, and understanding when people are uploading different file types, files with like hundreds of rows for different locations as an example, that the app can like pick on that, and also how you've created UIs to suggest, how things are changing and how. That's a big change of, I guess it's this element of having a staging environment for how data gets uploaded, because I know it comes from different sources to different activities, but being able to review and check the suggestions of NetNada. And I know you've done, the biggest change I was super, super interested on is on the connection between the raw data and the file that links to that data. So a big change that was done was inside your file stable in NetNada. You would upload all this stuff, could be dozens, hundreds of documents. When you click to that document, you actually see what was inside it without having to open, download it again.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of backtrack exactly from emissions to file to raw data and see everything in sequence.
Yeah.
And my question to that was, is it a challenging architectural decision to make that happen, or is it straightforward? How do you see, because initially NetNada didn't function in that way. We're just going source data to emissions, we've added that step in between. Was it a big change? Was it challenging to construct? Do you think it's the right way forward?
It was a big change, and it's definitely the right way forward, but it was a necessary change, and that's why we implemented it. Again, because we're working with a lot of data, and also for our clients, these data can be coming from multiple other tools that they use, and it could get messy at sometimes, and you would tend to forget what you have uploaded and what it means within the app. So the ability to go back and check the files and then check the data inside that files immediately is a big win, I think, for our clients, so that they can be sure of what they've uploaded and what that means.
What I like the most is, we do give the option to download everything in the app and your audit table and all the raw data and the hyperlinks to the files. But if the user doesn't want to leave the safe environment and keep it inside the platform, now they can.
The redundancy is removed. And
that's super cool. One big thing which relates to OCRs, which is how we extract information from files, was particularly looking at invoices and market-based emissions. So as you know, some invoices or some providers of electricity might show emissions directly in the PDF that they supply to you at the end of the month. So there was a lot of training needed to be done to ensure that we not only extract kilowatt hours consumed and address and billing, but also information that might be inside images or graphs.
Yeah.
How was that process, and how did you go about it, from collating maybe examples to seeing if it worked to extracting it?
This was a really fun feature that we brought in because the current setup in which we were working, so the way the app logic was working, was that if you have electricity bills and you upload them, they take the information about like the amount of wattages you used or like you spend and calculate the emissions for you. And it was already very accurate and there was nothing wrong. But like you mentioned, in terms of electricity, there's emissions directly given on the PDFs that we are like ingesting. And those are like market-based emissions that we're getting. So if we know the answer, why are we avoiding it and then going and calculating it ourselves? Now that adds a little bit more audit reliability.
Yeah, extra steps that, we could either use market-based emission factor that is, for the region, because there's the location-based and market-based, but actually the single source of truth is already inside the invoice.
Yeah, and it has a compounding effect because all those small assumptions that we are now not making will then add up at the end of the year in your file to be like, oh, that's a really accurate emissions number that NetNada is giving me now because we're taking it directly from who's providing your electricity.
Yeah, and it makes it, I think, for easier auditing. The auditor can say, give me your source of information for electricity, and they can actually check.
It's on the table, like you said, you can see the files, and it's the numbers add up. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so one last thing that is not fully completed, but we're working on it, is notifications, right? At the moment, we have users receiving weekly updates about the tasks they are left to do, but we are working a lot on other real-time notifications inside the app via emails, and the team is going through the permissions and the settings and the controls of that.
Yeah.
What is some of the things that you think as a developer, by making a feature like this, what normally is very simple notifications, but thinking about what does it mean to notify someone, if it's inside the app, outside the app, how do you delete it, how do you have a history of different notifications, when something is done and not done, what's the thought process behind that?
Yeah, in hindsight, it looks like a simple task. You're just like taking all your clients' information and then you're taking the tasks that they have in hand and then you're informing them. But then like, even if you think about it for a few minutes, you start to understand how deep the thought process needs to be for a feature like this. As a developer, why do we think that? Because every time we interact with a client with a notification and stuff, I think it's really important to understand that they have their own workflow, and for us to email them means we are basically signaling that, hey, this needs attention, and they will then give their attention to it, which means we need to make sure that we are doing it at the right pace and we are prioritizing what needs, actual attention versus what can wait and all these. So basically being mindful of the fact that their time can't be wasted by just simply.
And I think there's a really good balance of what tasks are happening instantly in NetNada, like something that has changed and giving a notification that has been completed and processed, versus something that might be a background task or be a batch task where we're processing hundreds of documents and they might take minutes and they could return it later. And how do we minimize, context switching? Can they just get confirmation something was done and the summary already?
That actually is a really good way of saying it. Like, we don't want our clients to context switch a lot. So how can we have notifications that allow them to have that flow in like how they use NetNada's platform?
Yeah. Well, that was all for March. As always, we're here to answer any questions that you have. Please contact us via email, LinkedIn, or if you are already one of our clients, feel free to just call us.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions for Bala, please do reach out.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cool.